Hey all, JTC here, and today I wanted to talk about why you should be careful giving unsolicited advice in Vermintide. Now, this video isn't necessarily strictly related to Vermintide. This really just goes for the internet in general. You should be very careful giving unsolicited advice on the internet. I was reviewing a gameplay review, and this kind of issue cropped up, and I did share my opinions on it in the video, which you'll see whenever I upload that, but I thought it would also make for a really good separate video, so here we are. Now, the reason I say that is because the internet is not always a nice place. I'm sure I am blowing nobody's minds by saying that, and while there are some nice people on the internet has been, a boon in some cases, but a lot of the times, especially due to this, just the anonymity that people have on the internet is not always a nice place. And because of that, people tend to jump to the worst conclusions when something happens. And whenever you give unsolicited advice in Vermintide, a lot of the times people are going to jump to negative conclusions and get incredibly defensive and hostile. Now, it's not necessarily your fault. You may think that you're helping this person out by giving them some advice that they might need because they're struggling. However, because you're talking over text instead of voice, the problem with just communicating with text in general is that it's very subjective how people read it. You might think you're typing something very respectful and very nice, but the person reading it might interpret it in a completely different way and interpret it incredibly hostile, and then respond in turn with hostility. Now, of course, you could just rectify this by talking over voice chat, but the problem is not everybody has voice chat on in the first place, so really the only way to talk to people is over text. So, realistically, the advice that I always give regarding this is to don't give advice unless someone specifically asks for it. If someone says, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this with Pyromancer and I struggle to stay alive. Do you have any tips?" That's one thing, but just straight up giving advice that no one asked for a lot of the times leads to hostility because people think that you're ragging on them. Because let's be real, if you're giving advice to someone, think about why you're doing that in the first place. It's because they did poorly in the game. It's because you saw them do poorly. Either they were going down a lot, they were eating a lot of supplies, their scoreboard is pretty low. Basically, whenever you give unsolicited advice to people, you're accusing them of not being good at the game in kind of like this roundabout way. And because of that, people get incredibly defensive about it and get hostile to you. Now, which is why I say just don't do it. However, there is actually a way to get around this and to change the way that you type in order to make people more receptive to your advice. And that is basically changing it from this. Instead of saying, "Hey, Pyromancer, you should take Bonded Flame, it'll help you not go down as much," you could say something along the lines of, instead, "Hey, Pyromancer, you should consider taking Bonded Flame. I know when I was playing Pyro, I was dying a lot, but when I started taking Bonded Flame, it helped me survive a lot more." What this does is, instead of putting the blame onto the person you're trying to give advice to, you're instead taking that blame and shifting it on yourself. And that makes people a lot more receptive because they don't feel like they're getting blamed. You're putting yourself in the line of fire rather than putting that person in the line of fire. And that just in general makes people a lot more comfortable and a lot more receptive. It's this entire psychological idea. It's not even a surprise. People don't like to be accused of being the weak link. People don't like being a problem, and people are always going to be shifting blame. But if you instead take that blame on yourself and use that as a way to offer advice, people are going to be much, much more willing to listen to you. Or if someone's DPS output is a little low, you could say, "Hey, Saltspire, you should consider running Assassin with Rapier instead of with Flail, because I actually just discovered that since Rapier is a finesse weapon, it scales a lot better with Assassin than Flail does." Or you could say, "Hey, Ranger Veteran, you should consider running Barskin instead of Boon of Shalia. I know that when I was going down and when I started running Barskin, I was able to survive a lot more, and my teammates were able to get me a lot up." Basically, anything that shifts the blame off of the person you're offering advice to onto yourself, they're going to be much, much more receptive to your advice, and they're going to be a lot less likely to be hostile to you. Will this solve the hostility problem completely? Of course not. There's still people who are going to be mad, but this at least should limit it in some aspects and make it a little more bearable and actually allow you to avoid some cases of hostility. But yep, that's all I had for today. Peace.